ahead.
Okay. So my name is Matt Wheeler. I'm actually filling in for Kim. Kim is out. She wasn't feeling well, and she called me and basically asked me if I could do the Prodependence question and answer webinar for her. I am a clinician in her office. I'm actually her next door neighbor at Family Strategies, at the agency we both work at, and so. I have been practicing as a clinician for roughly 8 years. I am a certified sex addiction therapist, so I will, as I answer questions, often probably come a little bit from the sex addiction standpoint, but I will do my best to make this addiction in general, because as we know, the Prodependence is about all addictions, not just to sex addiction or anything in particular. So um, I actually I do a lot of attachment work. I do a lot of couples work. I have a bit of training in emotionally focused couples therapy. And so talk a little bit about that today. So Tammy, I guess, yeah, you're going to have to unmute for a second. So I have something in particular I was going to talk about as far as interactions
Please
between couples.
do.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, please do. We'll start off with a topic, and then those of you that have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. If for some reason the Q&A isn't working, look at the chat, and I will do my best to monitor all of those. I am at an internet disadvantage. There's a storm coming. I'm in Cape Cod, and the hurricane, I'm going to get the tail end of it, but not the hurricane. So it's okay, but I don't have stable internet. So these
Okay.
are minor inconveniences compared to those who really got stuck.
So
So
fantastic. One of the things that I notice a lot in doing addiction recovery work is that when you have a situation where you have a partner and you have the other partner is struggling with addiction, it often can create a an unequal relationship dynamic, and that's where the old verbiage would be, the partner who is in a healthier place in their life might be codependent. And obviously we understand that now. They're just trying to keep the relationship intact. But in that position of them being healthier and wanting to keep the relationship well, it often can look like control, or look like they're trying to manage the addict so that they can have a healthy relationship. And we have what's called a peer-to-peer relationship. It's referred to as a horizontal relationship. That's what every marriage should be, rather than a mentor-mentee relationship like a parent-child relationship. But when you have somebody struggling with addiction, they often don't understand how healthy attachment works. And so my partners will often feel like they're the parent in the relationship and the addict is the child. And it creates this dynamic where the partner is trying to get the addict to step up and be a peer in the relationship. And the addict is oftentimes being under accountable and not obviously taking accountability, sometimes being over accountable, but they're in the child role. And in an effort to try and gain power in the relationship, sometimes they become domineering, and maybe they want to take over finances and not let their partner have any control there, or they act out in their addiction. And that in their way is a way to take power, but that's a dominating position in the relationship instead of an equal position. So it becomes a difficult thing in recovery to teach not only the person struggling with addiction that it's important to step up, to be a peer in the relationship, but also teach the partner to learn how to let them step up, because when they step up and start to take accountability, it's vulnerable. It's really scary. And if they step up and take accountability and fail, like they have so many times, it causes a lot of pain. So teaching the person who's struggling with addiction how to step up and teaching the partner to let them really becomes this vulnerable thing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I have no idea what questions you guys might have around that. Obviously, there's questions around boundaries, because it requires having healthy boundaries. It's also giving the person struggling with the addiction accountability, letting them step up. So yeah, so any questions that anybody might have on that, or any other feedback? Tammy, I know that you're in a interesting spot.
I am, but I'm going to try. So, you know, when you're talking about the uneven, and that is so true, and I hear that often too with, you know, unwillingly a partner gets put in the parenting, and then the addict often is rebelling against the partner. Like they're not happy that they're being treated like a child, but they still aren't stepping up to be able to be an equal. And so, you know, it's difficult for both parties, I think, to try to rebalance. If it's like this, it's hard to work on rebalancing. And I'm sure that there's a little bit of, you know, a little too much, you know, before you can find that. But, you know, and it takes work from an addict to learn to step up, you know, to, you know, it's really, it feels like it's more like this, and, you know, the partner has to come down a little bit, but you know, the addict really needs to step up. And it's easy. My experience is it's easy for the addict to blame the partner. Well, they won't treat me like an adult, you know, it's like another excuse, rather than, oh, I can understand why they wouldn't treat me like an adult, you know?
Right. So. And in that blame, that's that moment of under accountability where it's not my fault. If you just treated me the right way, then I'd be accountable. And the difficulty is that the addict has struggled to know what attachment even looks like, because typically as a child, that's where they developed these addictive behaviors. So rather than learning to reach out for support, rather than learning to ask somebody to help them be accountable, they've just learned to go to their addiction rather than go to a relationship where the attachment can actually occur. So it makes the partner feel crazy, because they typically will come from a relationship where they at least have a decent understanding of what attachment looks like, and yet they don't know how to teach it. Why would any of us know how to teach somebody else? And not only that, why should I? I get married to have a peer relationship, not to teach somebody else how to have a peer relationship.
One of the things, and you and I have both seen the Cartman drama triangle enacted, and it's always fascinating to see that, and how the patterns, you know, we'll just keep doing the patterns over and over again, even though they aren't serving us and giving us what we ultimately want. It's what we know, and it's like, we're going to keep doing this until somebody says, okay, enough, how can we do this differently? And then it's, you know, it's kind of the negotiating of, well, if this is the goal of what we want, how do we both get there? What steps are we willing to take? You know, how can we, you know, how can we take even baby steps to move towards that, and recognize it's going to be a process, and we're going to fail and try again.
Right. And in couple relationships, I've found every human being tends to do what they've always done. And in a couple relationship, as I teach my couples how to be more accountable, as I teach them how to attach, oftentimes they will stop doing the behavior that doesn't work, that they've learned doesn't work, but then it's like they freeze. So I'll stop doing what I was doing, but now then there's almost no engagement, because they're afraid to now screw it up. And that's the scariest thing about attachment, is that we have to risk. We have to be vulnerable. We have to give the other person an opportunity to screw up. We have to give ourselves the opportunity to screw up. So we do get caught into the drama triangle, because those are the things we've always done, or we might actually switch. So I've learned that being the persecutor isn't healthy. I've learned how I have been the persecutor, but maybe now I switch and I start being the rescuer because, well, that's another role that I've learned, but I've always been an expert at being the persecutor. And so then we just kind of switch to another unhealthy behavior, but it feels different than what we've been taught is bad. So at least I'm trying something different.
And I think you're right. You know, the getting frozen. So it's like, you know, so how do you share with couples like, okay, rather than getting frozen, what are some steps, or what can we recognize as being willing to be vulnerable, or how can we take those baby steps?
Totally. So one of the first things I teach my couples, and it's kind of a little bit difficult to understand, but the term I use, or that I have been taught myself, is called slicing it thinner. So if I know that I'm stuck and that I'm frozen, that's actually what I start to talk about. I will say to my partner, hey, in this moment, I'm stuck and I'm frozen, and I don't want to make a mistake because I don't want to make things worse, but I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure what to say because I'm scared. So you actually slice it thinner and go straight to the moment of just talk about being frozen and share with your partner how I care about you and I don't want to make the wrong choice, but all I know how to do right now is to stay frozen. And then by talking about the moment I'm in, that creates vulnerability and an opportunity for our partner to even just say, thank you for telling me you're frozen. I'm frozen too, but this is us trying to get better. So we almost can bond and connect just on the idea that we both understand where we are right now, even if we don't quite know where to go.
I could see even being willing to share that I'm stuck could be a very vulnerable thing. And even recognizing, my thought is, I'm stuck, I'm uncomfortable, and addicts in particular are really not good at that. So then it's like, well, I'm just going to leave, and I'm going to extricate myself, or I'm going to cause a commotion, I'm going to cause a fight or whatever. I'm going to shift the dynamic. So being willing to understand I'm stuck, I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to be willing, and I'm going to go, I'm really scared in this moment. That has to be like a huge step. Just that little bit has to feel like a huge step towards the relationship.
Absolutely. Like the funny thing about sometimes people think, well, I don't want to slice it thinner. I want to get to this really big thing. And I've actually challenged people. It's probably more vulnerable to slice it thinner and just to say, I'm really scared, I'm stuck right now, than it is to just push through to this big thing and put it on your partner. Because if we can learn to just be present with our emotion, it actually gives our partner the opportunity to just be present in the emotion, which, like you said, an addict might just want to run away. Emotions make them uncomfortable. Their emotional tolerance is really low. So just by sitting in, I'm frozen and I don't know what to do right now, it gives them an opportunity just to experience your fear and be present with you. So I really push, slicing it thinner can be much more vulnerable than pushing through to something big and heavy, because sometimes I give my partner something big and heavy, or I give the addict something big and heavy, and it just goes right over their head. They don't even realize how vulnerable it was unless I slice it thinner to say, I'm really scared. I want to share something big and heavy with you right now, but I just don't know how.
I like that too. It's like I'm going to take the little bit of step and go, I want to share something scary, and see how the reaction goes, and then, if you get that acceptance for it, okay, now I'm going to share the big and heavy, but like the surface has been prepared for it almost.
Right. Yeah, and if you think about it, hey, I want to share something big and heavy with you, and they're like, well, that's stupid, right? Like, then we're like, okay, so why is it stupid? Let's talk about that. I'm not going to go any further. I'm not going to share big and heavy with you because you're showing me you're not ready. But let's talk about why you're not ready.
I've used the term, I need to have a difficult conversation with you. And, like it prepares. sometimes it over prepares, because like some of the things I think are really difficult, end up being, well, that wasn't so bad, maybe that's good. I don't know. But like even just preparing it in my mind that, this is going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging, and I'm going to be vulnerable in sharing this, but it kind of sets the table when I've had those, it's been okay, okay. And, and like I said, I'm fortunate, and I know it takes.
Yeah, so it was breaking up on me a little bit there, but so when we prepare somebody by saying, hey, I've got something really difficult to share, it gives them an opportunity to kind of even check in with themselves and realize where, like, okay, where am I? Sometimes people are like, okay, so then we share what it is that's heavy, and they're like, oh, that's it, right? Like not to like dismiss what we shared, but to help them to just be ready for whatever it is we are sharing. We raise that emotional tolerance just by checking in what it is, and just letting them know, hey, this is difficult. And where I'm going to push is, and Tammy, I think you said it well, I've got something difficult, but consider adding the emotion in there of whether it's, hey, I'm a little bit scared to share this, or hey, I have some sadness coming up, or I'm feeling frozen. But if we can share what emotion we're experiencing, we want to get used to sharing our emotion so that we can get them understanding what we're feeling, and then hopefully them to tune in and know what they're feeling. Addicts can be so disconnected emotionally that we want to give as much opportunity for them to feel what they're feeling, and hopefully learn that language so they can share.
You're right. And I remember when I first got into recovery, I was having a very hard time with all emotions, like good or bad. It just was so intense that I couldn't stand it. So it was very difficult. So I do like what you're saying, is share what the difficult emotion is that I may be struggling with. I'm going to read a question. So if you look at the Q&A, if I cut out, you can reread it.
Okay.
But someone posts, I am so excited for this subject. So many times I've realized I was put in up and trying to work on time for work hour later. Could this parent-child dynamic be because the addict in child position by putting the spouse in authority position? You're not the boss of me. I'll show you, almost the way for the addict to feel in control.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect example where the addict may be taking to try and feel in control, but that would be a totally unhealthy position for them to put themselves in. But again, because they feel like a child, and they want to rebel so that they can equal out the relationship. What they don't realize is that they're not equaling out the relationship. They're actually damaging trust. So I'm trying to make sure I read this properly, but what would be healthy is instead for the addict to call up the spouse and say, hey, I'm really sad. I know, or hey, I'm worried because I've had this project come up at work last minute, and I know that we've been working hard on me getting home at a reasonable hour so that I can connect with you and the kids, or connect with you. And so I'm scared to tell you this because I'm worried that you're going to be disappointed. But I need to get this project done. And so what they do by being accountable is allow the spouse to feel their emotions and be disappointed. And that would be a healthy peer-to-peer relationship. So rather than, you know what, you need to understand that work is important, and that's how I support the family, and why don't you appreciate me? They're able to say, look, honestly, I'm scared to tell you that I'm going to have to stay late, and I know you're going to be disappointed, and I'm sorry. That would put them more in a peer-to-peer role. Now, obviously, if this was a chronic thing, we have to then assess and go, does this work in the relationship? But But in a peer-to-peer relationship, this is, hey, I'm not afraid to talk to you and disappoint you. And that's how relationships work. I'm going to disappoint you sometimes. Work is going to be demanding sometimes. But if it's the, you need to be understanding and you're not understanding, and why don't you ever appreciate me? That's very much that rebellious child. I'm gonna throw a tantrum.
But the harder line would be, you're going to set your own clock. On the end,
so it's breaking up just a little bit.
Yeah. Being merry-go-round.
Yeah, so I don't know what's actually being recorded because it's chopping out. I heard you say it's a merry-go-round, and it absolutely is going to feel that way. The spouse is going to feel super confused because she's trying to be vulnerable. She's trying to say, look, I want you home. I want to spend time with you. You're important to me. And he is taking this dominant position and basically saying, you don't understand me. And then she gets upset because she's trying to say, I love you and I care about you and I want you home and I want you close. And that makes him feel even more guilty or ashamed, or like he's a disappointment. And just like a child, when they feel like they're a disappointment, will often throw it back and be angry, or they'll run away and sulk and feel maybe worthless or bad. The addict needs to learn that it's neither. He's not worthless and he's not a disappointment. It might be disappointing that he had a work responsibility, but he himself is not a disappointment. So Tammy, you, I think, are gone, and I think I just had another question come up, so I'll read that. How does an addict's passive-aggressive behavior play into this type of relationship dynamic? That's a really good question. So you have to look at passive-aggressive behavior. So the passiveness is typically avoidance, and so the avoidance comes from oftentimes this lack of emotional tolerance and this inability for the addict, or really, if you look at it, any of us, but if we're in that situation, we go passive because we're hoping the other person will read our mind or know what we need. And if we don't get our need met, then they get aggressive. And then they lash out. So the passiveness would be the child role, would be the child role. The aggressiveness would be the dominating. So if you kind of think a peer-to-peer would be here, like with my hands, you might look at it and say the passiveness is them taking the child role. When they get aggressive and they're trying to dominate, they're trying to control, it might be them moving up here and trying to take more of that authority role. So both of them are unhealthy, and they need to learn to even own, hey, you know what? I was being really passive. I was withdrawing. I wasn't opening up to you about what was going on for me. I felt really attacked. I felt hurt. Or if they become accountable and say, hey, you know what? I was being really aggressive. That's not, that wasn't appropriate of me. I felt like I was out of control. I felt like I was in a child position, and I tried to get myself out of that child position in an unhealthy way. So I hope that answers that question. I lost you, Tammy.
I got really lost. I had to re-log in. I so apologize. So hopefully, are there other questions? Please ask them of Matt. So
I just answered another one. I saw it on there and I just answered it. So hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, it is.
And obviously, guys, if anybody who's watching, if you need clarity or you need me to jump into something a little more, please let me know.
Matt has a wealth of experience. I would invite you to ask him about not just couples, but attachment, anything about relationships that you're wondering about, please ask.
Yeah, and keep in mind, and this is what I love about the prodependence perspective. Like when I remember years ago when I was really studying the attachment work while I was doing the sex addiction work, I remember going to Kim and to several other clinicians being almost frustrated because I could see that what needed to be done in the addiction world, the attachment work wasn't brought in. And so it may sound funny, but when Rob first announced Prodependence, like I was super excited and a little like mad because I was like, I was hitting on this. And like I didn't have the knowledge or the experience that at the time when I could see this problem in the addiction world to bring forward what he has. I mean, Rob is brilliant and really was able to write about it so well. But it's this understanding that when I take that, even if I, in an unhealthy way, if I take that parent role as a partner to the addict, if I take that parent role, it's because I'm scared and I'm hurting and I love them and I just want things to be healthy. And the problem with the addict is they're clueless. Like attachment is just really outside of their realm of understanding. They know they want it. They know they need it. And so then they behave in totally unhealthy ways, like being passive aggressive or being controlling. Whatever move they make, they want a healthy relationship as well. They just don't know how to get it. So we do what we do because we want connection and because we love our spouse but it just doesn't show up that way. It looks so chaotic.
I hear what you're saying about they want it. I also think they're terrified of it, so it's both pieces of that. I part of me really wants this, but part of me is so terrified that I'm going to push everything away and my behavior is going to show me pushing away. No, I crave the...
Yep, you're breaking up on me again, and so I'm gonna jump in. But yes, like they crave it and they want it, but it's terrifying to them because it's so vulnerable. And in all honesty, in early recovery, they wouldn't know it if they had it, right? So it's scary, it's terrifying, and they run away or they run to their addiction because that's the attachment they've had and they've known. So I mean, I'll talk a little bit about in the early 2000s, there was a study done by Jim Cohen, and he would put people into an fMRI machine and he would give them an electric shock. And I won't give you all the details of how he did it, but it was pretty brilliant. And what he found is that when we're in the machine, an fMRI machine measures our brain in real time. And when we are in the machine alone, getting shocked, our fear and pain response is X. Like just imagine, for lack of a better way of saying it, it's 100%, right? And when we have a stranger holding our hand while we are in that exact same experiment, our fear and pain response goes down by 50%. Now, if we have a secure attachment and that secure attachment person is holding our hand, our fear and pain response is 90% less painful. So we're hardwired in our brains for connection. And typically an addict didn't get the attachment or didn't, for lack of a better way of explaining it, didn't choose to attach, didn't know how to attach, didn't have the opportunity for attachment. So when they get into a fully attached or primary attachment relationship with a spouse, they are trying to attach but not knowing how, and then running to the only attachment they have that they've always known, which is their addiction. And so that's why they keep going back. They just want to feel peace. They just want to feel, they want their fear and pain response to go down. But my addiction, I can always trust that. But my partner, well, sometimes they hurt me. My addiction never hurts me in the moment. It always shows up for me. It's obviously not true, and it's not healthy. But as they learn to no longer rely on the addiction and reach to their partner and other people within their support system, then they learn the real reduction of fear and pain by having somebody close to them while they're struggling. So there's another question here. Do you want to try and read it, Tammy? No? Okay, I'm just going to go ahead. So if I, as the betrayed spouse, recognize my husband is reverting into the child position, should I call him on it? That is actually such a good question. So the best thing to do is to, like I talked about earlier, is talk about the position that you're in. So what you do is you say, hey, in this moment, I'm feeling like, or I'm feeling a little bit nervous, I'm feeling scared, whatever emotion it is that you're experiencing, because I'm noticing that you seem to be withdrawing, or you seem to be mad at me. And so I'm wondering if you are feeling like I'm in the child role, and that you're in that I'm in the parent role and you're in the child role, or do you feel like we're in an equal place? So what you do is, rather than call him on it, call out the cycle that you are currently in and kind of own your side. So if you know that you just took the parent role, then just own that. Hey, you know what? I need to apologize. I think I'm scared right now. So I feel like I probably just took the parent role and tried to control you. And I wonder if that has triggered you and put you into a position where you feel like the child. So a lot of times because I want you to think about it, if you call him on it, you have to be careful not to take the parent role. If you take the parent role by calling him on it, hey, you're in the child position, right? That's a position of authority, rather than, hey, I'm wondering if this is what's happening right now. As peers, can we talk about what I'm feeling and what you're feeling and see if this is what's happening to us?
Thank you. I put some stuff in the chat I said, addiction is safe, it's known. Kim had shared that addiction is in the lizard brain area, so we retreat to that. Okay. It doesn't get into this area. She talked about that. She said it's like breathing, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so true. It's like that's where we go. It's just a safe place. And then I thought about often there isn't a safe place to attach. It's not even like we don't try as a child or whatever, but we just, we know that there isn't a safe place there isn't safety in it. So Enid Gray had wrote a book called Neglect, the Silent Abuser, and talks about not getting attachment in a safe place when we're young for a variety of reasons.
Absolutely. So I love it because, again, we may be wired for attachment, but it doesn't mean that we actually know how to do it. And again, we keep going back to that safe place. So I've got another question, and I'll go ahead and read that. So my husband seems to be unable to ever realize how his omitting truth or continual slips affects me, and instead always plays the child or victim role. Instead of owning his role in contributing to how I feel, he will just ask, how long are you going to be mad at me? So this is what I get for telling you about a slip. He is more worried about not getting attention from me than trying to figure out how to fix why we are in the situation in the first place, or owning his mistake. Absolutely. So again, the struggle that we have as a partner in this experience is to be able to in that moment say, So let me go back to this quote here. How long are you going to be mad at me? So we can own our position by even saying, you know, actually, I'm mad that this happened. I'm mad that you didn't disclose to me within a certain period of time, or I'm actually not mad. I'm just disappointed. I'm hurt. Because the story I tell myself is that your slip means that maybe we've taken a step back, right? So what you do in that opportunity, and that may sound funny, but I want you to consider he's in a moment of maybe being the child role or the victim role, however you want to phrase it. It's an opportunity for connection. But rather than calling him out and saying, ha, you're in the child role or you're being a victim, we can say, you know what? The truth is I am mad. And I'm hoping that as I continue to share that I'm mad or I'm disappointed or I'm hurt, that you and I will actually learn to get closer. So it's super frustrating because, again, as a partner, it feels like in a way I'm doing all the work. I'm the one that has to be the better person. I can't be hurt. I can't be sad. I can't be angry, but you can. You need to own, you know what? You're right. I am angry right now. And I'm hoping as you continue to tell me the truth, it gets easier for me to hear things that are disappointing, or it gets easier for me to hear that you've struggled. But the truth is I'm mad because I was looking forward to us growing closer, and this feels like a step back. Now, if he says, so this is what I get for telling you about a slip, say, you know, the truth is what you get are my emotions. And I'm learning, just like you are, to work through my sadness or my hurt or my disappointment. And as you tell me the truth, I'm going to become more and more tolerant. And so please keep telling me. So I actually will push the addicts that I'm working with. You want to face the conflict. And this is going to sound really rough. And maybe I should spend a little time wording it better, but you want to face the conflict and the opportunities of hurting your wife. Not that you ever want to hurt her or your husband, right? Not that you ever want to hurt them, but the truth is when we engage in relationships, we hurt each other. It's inevitable. But a healthy peer-to-peer relationship says, oh, I hurt you. I'm really sorry. Or I know I hurt you. I knew when I did this, it was going to hurt you, but you're so important to me, I'm going to tell you anyway. And I'm not going to keep secrets from you because I want to be close to you. So when he makes a comment like, well, this is what I get for telling you about a slip, or when she, you know, depending on the gender of your partner, right, when they tell you, oh, this is what I get for having a slip, then you say, you know what, unfortunately, sometimes you are going to get my hurt and my pain, but over time, this is going to bring us closer together. So that was a really good question.
Yes, and there's another one. You want to go ahead and take it?
All right, I'll hit it. What can a betrayed partner expect from her therapist in the initial crisis stage of discovery to help her heal? Like, what does this look like? Example, tell her story, tell my husband's story, learning coping skills. I had a bad experience with first CSAT and feel like I never had a good foundation to heal from. Yeah, unfortunately, that does happen. And that's the risk we take when we go see a therapist. My push would be, please continue to be vulnerable and take that risk until you find a therapist who knows how to support you. But yes, as far as when you first start to see somebody in the early stages of recovery, what I focus on is I focus on their support system, right? You've been doing this alone for long enough, or this is brand new and you've been hit by a train, and I want to see what your support system looks like, and I'm going to be working to try and expand that support system and help you expand that support system if it's low. I'm going to be working with a client initially on their dailies, like the things they need to do every day to keep them in balance. So coping skills, right? But focusing them to look back at themselves almost in a way to say in the beginning, I have to work on my survival, and I have to let my partner, the addict, work on theirs. But if both of us are unstable, then this is going to be a disaster. So I want the betrayed partner to focus on their individual needs, gain stability. The 4 areas that I push them is to focus on physical needs, emotional needs, relational needs, and spiritual needs. And it's 1 or 2 items every day intentionally in each of those categories in order to build a healthy foundation. And I also will work on self-compassion, being compassionate with themselves when they screw up. You're gonna make mistakes as a betrayed partner in trying to get things in a healthy spot. So I'm focusing a lot on self-compassion, tools for when they are triggered. I'm focusing on, and when I say triggered, I mean when their emotions are being stirred up, when betrayal wounds are coming up. So dailies, and their support system. So I think I kind of, the order I normally talk about them is focusing on support system, self-compassion, tools for when their emotional triggers come up, and then their dailies for gaining balance. So I think I answered that, but I'm really sorry that you had a bad experience, honestly, with the first CSAT that you worked with. But certainly I would, there's a couple things you could do. You could go back to that, and I encourage this a lot. Go back to the therapist. Let them know, hey, this was really hard for me. I think I need something different. That gives you an opportunity to stand up for yourself, to have a voice, and it gives them an opportunity to learn how to show up for you. That's a skill that you are going to need to learn in recovery. If for instance, you haven't learned it already, you're going to need to learn that in recovery to teach other people how to meet your needs. And so that you could do that very effectively by going back to that therapist and saying, hey, this didn't work for me. This felt like an injury, and here's what I need from you differently. I'm happy to clarify that more if I didn't explain it well, but in addition, let's say you don't go back to that therapist, go to your next one, make it very clear to them, here's what happened the first time, here's what I think I need. But as far as telling stories, my husband's story, telling them your story, I kind of leave that up to the client. I will often ask them, hey, tell me what you need here. Do you need to tell me the history? Do you need to tell me your story? And I might hear a person's story because that's what they're letting me know, that they just want to be heard. And so I'll spend a little bit of time going through their story before I jump in to some of that foundational stuff. But I generally want them to leave the session with some foundational items so that they feel like they have some tools to work with until I see them again the next time. So I think I answered that, but let me know if you need more clarity. So I have another question, and I'll read this one because Tammy is gone. When my husband tries to shame me because I'm angry, I finally learned to say, of course I'm angry. Anger is a normal reaction to what I've been through. I will not apologize for having a normal reaction. He tries to shame me for expressing difficult emotions because he doesn't know how to process his own, let alone anyone else's. And unfortunately, so one of the things that I've seen is that when people don't have a very high emotional tolerance, they will often try to shut down somebody else's emotions so that they can stay engaged, or they can disengage, but they will shut down somebody else's emotions. I think it's beautiful that you've learned to say, of course I'm angry. That sounds like a really good phrase. If it's if it's working for you, if it's not working for him, he is going to need to learn to gain that tolerance over time. One other thing that I often say is you might try to see, well, yeah, of course I'm angry. And honestly, underneath the anger right now is sadness. I'm disappointed, or I'm scared. Try to go and see if there's anything below the anger. If the anger is about a sense of injustice and that you're standing up for yourself, then anger is a beautiful emotion in that way. Sometimes anger is an emotion that kind of buffers vulnerability, that keeps us from going even deeper. And so I think it's super healthy that you're saying, of course I'm angry. It's a normal reaction. Now, when he shames you, which I think it's great that you're recognizing that pattern of behavior, you might try to, in addition, say, hey, I'm noticing that the message you're sending to me right now, the words you're saying, or the message you're sending me is that it's not okay that I'm angry. Help me understand why it's not okay for me to be angry, right? Why would that not be normal to you? So he tells you it's not okay. So just kind of gently hand it back. Well, yeah, of course I'm angry. Angry is a healthy emotion for me to have, but the sense that I'm getting is that you don't want me to be angry. Why is my anger so hard for you? Right now, I don't know how he's going to respond. Somebody might just shut down and say, forget it, I'm not talking about it. But what you're doing in that, I kind of like jokingly tell people it's kind of emotional kung fu. Like I'm not even getting mad at him for shaming me. I'm just showing him he's shaming me, or I'm showing him his pattern. I'm kind of grabbing what he's sending me and not taking it personal and handing it right back. So kind of this emotional kung fu is how I like to say it. But so again, remember, even it's important, even when your anger is coming up, don't take a defensive position. So if you're saying, of course I'm angry, don't I have a right to be angry? I wouldn't even go there. Of course I'm angry. That's a normal reaction. But tell me what's going on for you. And it appears to me like you're trying to tell me that anger would be unhealthy. So again, just kind of grab it, hand it back, talk about the cycle you're in rather than taking more of that parent role of saying, how dare you shame me? It's not okay to shame me. Just say, I noticed that it looks like you might be, you're not comfortable with my anger. What's that about? All right. I think I answered that. But like I said, you guys are asking great questions. Okay, so the next question, I think it's a continuation of that last one. I've done that. That's awesome. I'm angry because of blank, which makes me feel sad, hurt, jealous, or whatever I feel whatever I feel under the anger. Okay, so you've done that, and I guess you might, if you want to tell me how he responds or where you feel like you're getting stuck. So I'm waiting for a response. Okay, so the response that I'm getting is that he actually stopped. And in your opinion, do you feel like when he stopped, that was a good thing? Or did he withdraw? Because if he stops, hopefully he's getting present and he's staying present in the emotion. Because remember, when you say, I'm angry because of blank, which made me feel sad, hurt, or jealous, or whatever you were feeling under the anger, and he stops, he might be staying present in that emotion, or he might be withdrawing and running away. But either way, in those moments, you tend to create or at least add to the opportunity for emotional tolerance to be increased. Because remember, what we want is for him or her to learn to stay present in the emotion. They can accept your sadness. They can accept your hurt or your jealousy. Because a healthy, secure relationship says it's okay for you to be sad. It's okay for you to be hurt. It's okay for you to be jealous. I don't like it. I don't want you to feel that way. And where the attachment comes in is eventually we want the addict to be able to say, so how can I be here for you while you're sad? How can I ease your sadness? How can I ease your jealousy? How can I ease the discomfort you're feeling, right? You know that the addict is doing good recovery work, and typically I find that can be pretty far into recovery before he or she is able to be present and not try and fix. When we try and change somebody else's emotion, that's typically a sign that we do not have emotional tolerance. So the attachment is when the emotional tolerance is there, and I'm learning to be present with you in the emotion rather than trying to fix, change, or get rid of it. And that's a beautiful place in the relationship. Obviously, I think most of you are probably going, yeah, I want that. And it's really hard to pin a time frame, but I've learned that and some of my guys, I've been able to see them well, early on in recovery, as they're learning empathy, as they're learning to attach. Some of that attachment language is really robotic. I'm really sorry that you feel this way. Of course you feel this way. I did something to hurt you. What can I do for you right now? And my partners often get upset, like, well, it's better than what he was doing, but he sounds like a robot. And but the truth is, that is the groundwork. Him sounding like a robot and learning the steps of empathy is a good sign that he or she is in recovery and learning to be emotionally present. Then what comes after is more of a heartfelt, sincere, you can start to feel that they feel your sadness and your hurt. Let's see if I have anything. Oh,
with this one, hopefully I don't completely cut out, but with this too, I think of, even if the other person doesn't react like you want them to, or accept or move forward, with this particular example, it's like, I'm just saying, I'm angry because, and I feel like this. And so for me, I think I would at least not escalate into rage that they don't get it. I'd be at least taking some, not control even, but I'd be standing up for myself and saying what it was I was feeling for me. So even if it wasn't received on the other end and they weren't able to own that, she adds that, the behavior stopped. He realized I wasn't going to take his shame for feeling angry.
right.
And he used to pick fights, then use my anger against me so we wouldn't deal with his addiction. Instead, we talked about my anger issues. So it deflected it. So at least this
Right.
stopped it, and it interrupted the cycle.
Right. It did. And it's always a good thing when we interrupt the cycle, and when the cycle changes, it's like we have to learn to change with it. So then so I just noticed all the extra stuff that was added, but he realized I wasn't going to take shame for him feeling, his shame for me feeling angry. When he changes the cycle and says, well, let's talk about your anger issues, then we start to say, hey, so yes, sometimes I get angry, but ultimately anger is my vulnerability. So, and tell me, and you can point it out, it feels like we're now talking about my anger instead of talking about the things that are triggering my anger. So lean back into that and essentially say, yeah, you're right. I am working through my anger because I would love to get to my softer emotions quicker. I'm working through my anger so that I can share my sadness and my hurt with you. But it seems to me like we are spending time talking about my anger, and I want to talk more. Let's talk more about the addiction, or let's talk more about what was going on for you that caused you to tell me this thing or do this thing. So just kind of hand it back. You know what? Here's where we're at in our cycle. And so let's go there. You said my husband is a dry, non-active, not active porn addict, but he isn't in recovery and is in denial about his addiction. So what I've learned is that we can work with somebody who, sure, he's not acting out in his addiction. Oftentimes, if we're not working recovery, then our addiction comes out sideways in other ways. So we have to learn to just pick up on those cycles of where he is staying disconnected. Whether he moves from being a porn addict to a workaholic, and we start talking, hey, I've noticed that you've picked up a lot of work lately. I'm curious, what is work giving to you, right? Like, I'm wondering if that gives you a sense of belonging, and I'm wondering how we can foster that in our current relationship. So it's really tough because he might just push away every opportunity for you to be vulnerable and to get deeper with him. But then you start talking about him pushing away as the current part of that cycle. All right, I think those are the questions I've had so far. Tammy is still muted. So hopefully this is helping you guys to understand. I think we are getting pretty close to being done here, but I have time to answer another question or two. But so it's not the easiest thing, as you realize. In order to create a more peer-to-peer relationship, I have to be vulnerable, and I have to stay in my vulnerability without trying to force the vulnerability of my spouse. So, but it is being accountable, and it is asking them about their accountability instead of telling them that they're doing it wrong. It's talking to them and asking them about it, rather than taking that controlling or if you will parent role, or that role of scared and I just want to have things be equal. But it takes quite a bit of work to bring that peer-to-peer relationship to a healthy spot when that is just for the addict something that is so unfamiliar to them. So, Tammy, I think I have somebody's microphone on at the moment, but I think that's all we've got for today. And I'm excited to be here. I was excited to be here, and I appreciate the questions and answers. And I'm going to. What's that, Tammy? Okay, Tammy, you're back?
I'm cutting out, so I think you'll be able to hear me. I'm cutting out so bad, I don't know if you'll be able to hear me. I put it in the chat. Thank you to all of you. We hope you come back, Matt.
All right.
The next time, I promise I'll have good internet. So
sounds good. Thank you, Tammy, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
I look forward to seeing you guys again.
Bye.
Bye.